The sitting is resumed. Prior to this suspension, the Honourable Chamber was in Standing Finance Committee. We return to Standing Finance Committee.
At the suspension, the Honourable House was in Standing Finance Committee. To this, we now revert.
Mr. Chairman, Head 31, Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, in the amount of $40,994,157.
Honourable Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of Committees. I would like to ask your permission, sir, to vacate this chair and to join my team in another chair for further consideration of Head 31.
Permission so granted. Honourable Minister, you may proceed at this time, first of all, to introduce your team and then to give your opening overview for approximately 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to draw to everyone's attention the newness of this ministry, the newness not only from the perspective of myself as minister, but also key and critical to this entire leadership team, my PS, Mr. Wayne Marshall. He's relatively new, not as new as I am, but relatively new, all the same. And with that, my introductory statement is really going to lay the foundation for the ministry, for the benefit not only of my team, but also for the rest of the House and the wider Barbadian public. So I would beg your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, for some time and latitude relative to this introductory statement. I will not trespass too greatly on your patience.
Honourable Minister, you should not trespass at all.
Yes, Chair. I will try, I'll endeavor, I'll give it my level best not to trespass.
Yeah, but before you get into your statement, Honourable Minister, I want you to proceed with the introduction of the full team, those persons who are with you, so that we are aware of who are here to be in a position to answer the questions, and for most importantly for the records of this House as well. Thank you.
That's all. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. With me today, Mr. Chair, is our Permanent Secretary Acting, Mr. Wayne Marshall. We have Mr. Owen Harewood, Director of Digital Solutions. We have Mr. Charles Bostic, Director of Digital Infrastructure. We have Mr. Charles Cyrus, Director, Science, Market Research and Technology. Mr. Rodney Payne, Project Manager, Program Execution Unit. Edward Juman, Director, Efficiency Unit. Ms. Yvette Brathwaite, Accountant. Haisley Strawn, Digital Policy Coordinator. Ms. Elsa Webster, Project Manager for the National ID. And we have Mr. Mark Hill, CEO, BIDC, and our Senior Economist in the Industry Unit, Ms. Patricia Bain. So I'll commence with my introductory remarks, Mr. Chairman. The Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology's mandate is to lead both the digital and the industrial revolutions in Barbados. Therefore, MIST will bring Barbados fully into the digital era through the increased use of digital channels by individuals and companies, especially as it relates to access to public services. This drive towards the strategic, effective, and efficient adaptation and deployment of technological solutions will result in change, especially within the public sector, where various processes will be deconstructed and reconstructed to foster greater efficiency, to enhance service delivery, and to strengthen public sector skills. Equally, and with reference to industry, over many years, our local manufacturers and producers have contributed significantly to our country's foreign exchange reserves. They have either saved foreign exchange through the supply of high-quality products that can satisfy local demand, or they have earned foreign exchange by exporting those same products to our regional neighbors and to our international counterparts. But even as we grapple with changes in the geopolitics of this world, climate change, globalization, changing tastes and demands by consumers, and of course the greater reliance on science, technology, and digital services, my ministry recognizes the need to refocus our country and our people on new and rapidly developing industries that possess the potential to create tremendous opportunities for our people. These opportunities, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, will be carved out in more nascent industries like green or renewable energy, or in the multiplicity of life sciences, while at the same time, they can also be uncovered through innovations in more mature industries like those related to agro-processing. The twin issues of the global pandemic and the deleterious effects of climate change have created a deep sense of urgency for small island developing states like Barbados to reconstruct sectors and to develop economies that are resilient, diversified, innovative, and sustainable. With the island's key foreign exchange earning sector of tourism taking a debilitating hit from COVID-19, the mandate of this ministry to build an export sector that can deliver US $1 billion in foreign exchange earnings by 2030 has taken on even greater importance. Accordingly, one of government's major objectives in the short to medium term is to increase the export of goods and services as part of our plans to stimulate greater economic activity, create jobs, and shore up the island's foreign reserves through increased export earnings. In light of this, MIST, the ministry that I have the honor and privilege to lead, has an aggressive agenda to completely transform the public sector and by extension, all of Barbados. Colleagues, I can assure you that our daily efforts within this ministry are set squarely on delivering improved results in the following two overarching areas. One, relative to industry, to increase our country's level of exports through supporting export-oriented businesses that can earn on average in excess of US $10 million in exports annually. And 2, relative to innovation, science, and technology, to improve performance in key global indices such as the ease of doing business and ICT and e-government readiness, as these provide useful benchmarks for our performance. I am therefore pleased to take this opportunity to update Parliament today on the work and plans of my ministry. And of course, before we go through all of that, I want to thank each and every one of the members of the team that are here with me, not only those who are present in this room, but I want to thank all and applaud all of the officials of the ministry across the length and breadth thereof for the hard work and dedication that they have demonstrated thus far to the goals and the objectives of this ministry. Mr. Chairman, funding in the amount of $40,994,157 is required by this ministry to carry out its activities for the fiscal year 2022 to 2023. One of the primary draws on this requested amount relates to government's Public Sector Modernization Program, PSMP. Through additional and significant funding support from the Inter-American Development Bank, this program will see an investment in the improvement and modernization of the operations of the public service in the amount of US $40 million. That is a significant investment in the modernization of our operations as a public sector and a public service. This program has a number of transformative components, including the implementation of an e-services platform, the introduction of online services, the implementation of an electronic document and records management system, and of course, the digitization of our public service records. Ultimately, Chair and colleagues, the Public Sector Modernization Program is the primary vehicle of our government to, 1, facilitate its digital transformation mandate, and 2, to improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the public sector. Taking a moment, sir, to reflect on the performance of this ministry to date, colleagues will be pleased to know that we have already made tremendous progress relative to the digitization of government's records. This progress is encapsulated in 2 main accomplishments. 1, firstly, the Digitization Center, which was established at Vaucluse in St. Thomas. It is really the focal point of government's digitization efforts, and it currently runs 2 shifts. One shift runs from 8:30 in the morning to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and the second shift runs from 4:30 through to 10 p.m. And we are currently in the process, and we will soon establish a 3rd shift that will run from 10:30 p.m. through to 7 a.m. That demonstrates the commitment of our government to the process of digitizing the volumes of government and public records that we have to digitize. The second accomplishment relates to the number of records that have already been digitized, Mr. Chairman. As at February 23rd this year, 657,600 records have already been digitized from 8 ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs. Furthermore, I ask you to note that records are currently being processed for an additional 6 MDAs. And upon their completion, it is expected that a further 1,108,500 records will be digitized. But we're not stopping there, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. My ministry expects to commence processing of records for yet another 10 agencies on March the 7th, 2022. So as you can see, sir and colleagues, this ministry continues to busily execute the work and mandate of this government in digitizing the significant volume of records accumulated over many years. Of course, the task is great, but I'm happy to say that I lead an equally great team, and we are up to the task. Chairman, I will now ask that we turn our attention to another key initiative of MIST, the Smart City. The first phase of my ministry's Smart City implementation will see the deployment of free public Wi-Fi across our capital city of Bridgetown. Subsequent phases are slated to include the implementation of smart services such as parking, environmental monitoring, traffic management, the use of mobile apps for self-guided tours, and information on places of interest in Bridgetown. Sir, this may not be widely known, but the provision of free Wi-Fi access across Bridgetown has already begun, with access currently being available in the Fairchild Street and Princess Alice bus terminals, around the Treasury building as well. And soon to be added, very soon to be added, will be the Cheapside Market, Jubilee Gardens, the area surrounding the General Post Office, around Parliament Building, Swan Street, and Suttle Street are listed amongst the key areas that will be targeted in the very near future. Colleagues, and in particular my honourable friend from the city of Bridgetown, would be pleased to know that it is our intention to ensure that the free Wi-Fi access is also extended to cover the residential districts within the city. And this in particular gives me tremendous pride, Mr. Chairman, as I can envision little children in Nelson Street, Wellington Street, in Greenfield, Warren Street, Bedford Lane, etc., being able to access free Wi-Fi to execute their studies, to carry out their studies, and to be able to focus on their studies with that access. And not only that, that maybe their parents will be able to use that free Wi-Fi access to be able to embark on commercial endeavor that can bring a stream of income into their homes. And this, Mr. Chairman, is why myself and these fine men and women come to work every single day to ensure that we can make this vision a reality. We have so much to say, Mr. Chairman, and so little time. I wish to move on quickly to an area that is dear to my heart, that of innovation. Several initiatives which have been designed to foster innovation have been pursued by the Science, Market Research and Innovation Unit. Firstly, I wish to underscore that innovation is a vital factor in economic growth and prosperity. To this end, our government is seeking to develop a culture of innovation through recognition and reward. Accordingly, my ministry has piloted the School Innovation Award. This is an award that is designed to reward students and teachers for their creativity and their innovativeness. Secondly, we acknowledge that there is the reality of a digital divide, and the desire of this government is that there be widespread utilization of the various services that we are going to be offering when they're placed online. Therefore, the ministry has introduced a Digital Acceleration Ambassadors Program. And through this program, student volunteers are deployed as digital ambassadors to assist in helping and educating citizens across the island in the use of digital services, particularly those that are being used by the government. Thirdly, in the arena of innovation development, my ministry will execute the 6-week Science and Technology Summer Camp, which is designed to expose campers to careers in STEAM, whilst at the same time introduce them to local scientists and technologists. And finally, Mr. Chairman, MIST shall seek to execute the Robotics Collaboration and Education Project. The aim of this particular project is to introduce primary and secondary school children and also university level students to the social and service robots that are available out there. The allocation for this project's execution is $60,000 in this fiscal, and one of its key outcomes would be for participants to learn how to program robots for a myriad of social applications, including health, education, sales and marketing, and of course even elder care. As I begin to wind up my presentation, colleagues, I will ask that you stay with me as we now explore the realm of the digital and national ID. Given our government's progressive move towards e-governance, it is well appreciated that such services need to be both useful and secure. That is, it is essential that the person using government's e-services can be identified and authenticated digitally by the relevant authority. This requires the development of a digital identity concept with supporting frameworks and infrastructure. Therefore, MIST proposes the implementation of a 2-part digital identification program comprising of 1, a new, more secure plastic national ID card, and 2, a digital mobile identity application. Very quickly, Chair, the new secure plastic ID is accepted that, and widely accepted that the existing laminated ID that we have is no longer fit for purpose. It is prone to fraud. It is not readily accepted outside of Barbados, and therefore it must be changed. MIST, in partnership with the Electoral Department, proposes the replacement of the existing card with a more secure plastic ID card with more embedded security features. This card will facilitate everyday transactions where in-person identification is required, and it will also help to cut down on fraudulent use, as it will be very difficult to replicate. With reference to the digital mobile identity application, Mr. Chair, in addition to replacing the laminated card, the Electoral Department and MIST proposes a digital mobile identity that will be issued as an app that will be downloaded on the mobile phone of the bearer. The mobile version of the cardholder's national ID will be linked to a secure infrastructure and trust services that facilitate identification and authentication within a digital environment. Cybersecurity, therefore, Mr. Chairman, is where I would want to end on this part of the presentation. With all of these activities and services that will be introduced very shortly by my ministry, I do not have to tell you, sir, that there must be a strong focus on cybersecurity. This is even more apparent as our government moves forward rapidly with our digital transformation agenda that has already seen significant uptake in our online services. National cybersecurity policies that provide the right legislative framework are foundational to our efforts to ensure not only a resilient but a robust IT infrastructure and e-services. As you can see, Mr. Chairman, we have an ambitious, challenging, yet highly exciting agenda relative to innovation, science, and technology. And I have not even begun to scratch the surface of the suite of programs therein, but I digress. I will close now with reference to industry, Mr. Chair, with your indulgence. With reference to our industry component, time will not permit me in this introductory statement to expand on all of the exciting initiatives and projects that we currently have moving. But I am hoping that they will be fleshed out during the course of an ensuing discussion. But before I wrap up, I would like to highlight some of the strategic priorities of my ministry relative to the development of industry. For context, sir, we have seen certified exports activity amongst exporting businesses fall from 238 participating exporters to only 80 active exporters nationally, from 238 to 80. Accordingly, members of the last BLP administration felt that an export-oriented industrial policy was necessary, and I can indicate to the Honourable House that such was started by and led by former Prime Minister, the late Professor Owen Arthur, and this policy is now well advanced in its development. Its primary goal would be to address the rapid decline in the number of firms and entrepreneurs participating in industry, and equally important, to increase our export activity. Ultimately, the export-oriented industrial policy and framework will seek to drive innovation and enable double-digit growth for all export enterprises and entrepreneurs, with an overarching focus on creating value. So therefore, what is our growth strategy, Mr. Chairman and colleagues? I start, Mr. Chairman, with a declaration that science is industry and industry is science. And this declaration demonstrates the almost perfect and natural marriage that now exists with the combination of the portfolios of industry with innovation, science, and technology. To that end, my ministry, through the Barbados Investment and Development Corporation, has developed projects and initiatives which will address key challenges in industry and deliver economic growth to our country. I will now list them, and I hope that through the discussion that ensues that we'll be able to flesh out each of them, but I will now just give them here to whet the appetite of my parliamentary colleagues. Firstly,
Honourable Minister,
yes,
you will
Chair.
have plenty of time. I've given you the latitude you've asked for.
No problem.
So you need now to wrap up, as you will have more time during the course of this discussion to get into the details which I know you so eagerly want to get into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will wrap up. Just to say that some of the things that we're going to talk about will be the International Food Science Center, the eco-industrial parts, the life sciences parts. Those are a whole host and others that we have slated to bring economic activity to Barbados and, of course, to increase our exports. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will now pause and allow questions from my parliamentary colleagues. My team stands ready to answer any questions that will come to the fore.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. Just let me give some guidelines for the benefit of your team. I'm sure that you are quite familiar with the guidelines since you've been part of this debate for the past 3 days. You're given 5 minutes, Honourable Minister, to respond. You have to, before you proceed, I'm sorry, you have to move the head, and then I will continue. Please move the head, Honourable Minister.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that head 31 in the amount of $40,994,157 stand part.
As I was saying, Honourable Member, you will have 5 minutes to respond to any questions from your colleagues at any given point in time. And members of your team will be given 3 minutes to respond to questions which you may so designate to them. I also want to add, for the records of this House, we're asking members of the team, before you begin to speak, please introduce yourself and the title or office which you hold within the ministry. Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honourable Minister, let me take the opportunity at the outset to congratulate you on the assumption of office. Formally, that is, I've done so obviously before. And to thank you for your very in-depth presentation. I should also take the opportunity to congratulate you and your team for the very ambitious, challenging, and exciting program which has been put together and rolled out in a very preliminary way before us just now. Honourable Minister, I must speak to you in the context of the business environment in Barbados. And I want to use this opportunity not because I think that in any way I would want to be unfair to you, quite the contrary. I want for you to be able to point me in the direction of which of your team would be in the best position to assist the country in coming to understand the position that we are in today with respect to a very vexing problem for the average micro and small business person in Barbados. If I am a plumber, for argument's sake, Minister, I have my own business, and I am reached by those people who are my clients by way of access to my cell phone number. I may, from time to time, have some challenges with my particular service provider. I may, however, also be a person who has had that service provider for 8, 9, or 10 years, maybe more. And the reality is that my clients have come to know me as a result of my number being whatever the number is, and they know how to access me at any hour of the day or night, any bank holiday, whenever a pipe bursts. Pipes have the unfortunate habit, Minister, of not giving us notice when they're going to burst, but they just do so. And I find that the plumbing community has then to respond to challenges at a last minute. And that is not only true of plumbers, it is true of several other micro business people who are providing services around the country. You need to reach them at the last minute or at short notice, and you go to them via the number that they have, that cell phone number that they keep in the hip pocket or the back pocket or wherever. But I may have, that service provider may have, that plumber or whoever may have a challenge with his service provider. I don't want to get into the names of the service providers, but you may wish then to say, I'm going to leave this particular service provider and go elsewhere in the search of better service. To do so, however, in Barbados today, you would have to change your telephone number. And you're disadvantaged as a business person because none of us have a cell phone number that is recorded in a directory anywhere. So I can't go and say I'm trying to find a plumber by the name of Davison Ishmael. I have to go find his cell phone number. I have to go by the number I have. And if he changes, then I got a little challenge in finding where it is that his new number is. This has been the bane of the existence of virtually every small and micro business player in Barbados who's not operating necessarily from an office, but is an itinerant person moving from point to point in the island. Their contact is their cell phone number. And their trade is compromised by the inability to move from one cell phone service provider to another in a seamless way and take that number with them. It is a concept which is referred to by the more technically minded people as number portability. Now, that issue, Minister, preceded this administration coming into office. I know because I have heard in the cabinet that there have been discussions with the cell phone service providers. It preceded, sir, us as far back as when we would have been in the last government, when the Labour Party would have been in government for the last time. This discussion began back then. And I feel, sir, that we need now to be able to engage the country, and I want to give you the opportunity, or your team the opportunity, to engage the country with precision as to where we are with this matter and what we may confidently expect to be the end point at which this issue will finally be put to rest in Barbados.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the question. It is a vexing issue. I agree 100%. And it does affect the way that we do business in Barbados, and not only Barbados, because the issue is broader and bigger than just Barbados. I actually had the privilege in my very first 2 weeks on the job to sit in on a co-TED session which focused on ICT, and number portability was one of the main issues that was discussed during that session. Not only that, but in my very first courtesy call with the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, that too was one of the issues that was highlighted then. And significant progress has been made regionally. And I can tell you that this has been something that our Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, has also piloted quite a bit in regional circles, especially when she was the head of CARICOM. Before he left, I will allow our Director of Infrastructure and Cybersecurity, Mr. Clifford Bostic, I will allow him to come in to speak more in a fulsome manner with reference to timelines, etc., because I know that he has already advised me that quite a bit of work has been done locally in terms of draft cabinet papers already done and we're looking to have legislation coming very soon, but I will let him speak at this point in time to give a more fulsome response to your question. Mr. Bostic?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clifford Bostic, Acting Director for Digital Infrastructure in MIST. Yes, a very good question, Honourable Minister. Yes, it is a vexing question. We have been at this since 2017, to be exact, and when there was we saw the consolidation of the market when it comes to telecommunications, where several companies were absorbed by Liberty Global, and one of the conditions was that they be ready for number portability in 2017. We started the project then, and we had 2 delays. Each of the service providers had some issues that had to be resolved, so we had to stop. But we have started the project back in October 2021, and we have completed a number of things that we are going to be using to make local number portability for Barbadians realizable. We are delivering to the market fixed or landline number portability as well as mobile portability. We are going to implement legislation that is catering towards the harmonization of legislation across CARICOM. This is one of the things that is now high on the table, high on the priority list for implementation by CARICOM through our Caribbean Telecommunications Union. That is that we have a regulatory framework that is regional, that allows us to provide services in a seamless manner right across this region in the same manner as which our major providers that you know of, Digicel and Liberty Global, having a single network which will allow for a single ICT space. So yes, number portability is coming. It is going to be with us by middle of 2022. A commitment has been given by both service providers to those dates, while they are working along with MIS, as well as a consultancy firm that has been doing number portability across Europe as well as across the Caribbean region. we are learning from the errors and mistakes of all those countries who have implemented number portability. And when we come to the market in mid-2022, you will see both mobile as well as fixed services number portability for our customers. This has been a long wait, and trust me, our customers will be very well happy with this, because they will be able to keep their fixed number as well as their mobile number. They will be able to move from one provider to another. And by the way, we have a third operator, service provider in Barbados that has been licensed, and that's KW Telecommunications Limited. And they are also preparing for number portability as well as preparing to launch their services in Barbados. I thank you.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then it would be that across the 3 service providers, we will, by June, which is the middle of 2022, be able to have number portability both for mobile and land-based phones.
Correct, that's correct.
Sorry, I didn't hear a yes?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, fine, thank you. I only have one other question, Mr. Chairman, if I may do so now. And that, again, is very business-oriented. And, Minister, I throw this out there. You and I have had the benefit of an engagement at which I raised the matter previously. We were in the company, the very distinguished company of the minister responsible for, the senior minister with oversight of infrastructure at the time. It relates, sir, to the question of the model of exportation of bulk rum from Barbados, which we have historically done, which some people have historically done for what might be pennies or odd cents on the dollar. And then a value-added process takes place, which is to the benefit of blenders and bottlers who do not necessarily reside in Barbados. There is another model where it is all done here. There are countries which have seen the benefit of capitalizing on the opportunity to build out industry and the competitiveness of their industry by linking the industrial effort to the geographical area where that effort is conducted. Blue Mountain Coffee in Jamaica is a classic example of that, but in the context of rum, the Jamaicans and the Guyanese, and indeed the Trinidadians, have now come to a point where they have seen the importance of what they call, or what the industry calls, geographical indicators, which are speaking specifically to the inputs and the conditions of production of the rum in those particular areas. Now, it would seem to me that the home of rum should be no different. In fact, I would have hoped that the home of rum would have been the leader in doing these things in the world. Minister, you know my views personally, and again, I only speak now because I am a minister responsible for business, you're a minister responsible for industry, and we have the entire country as our theater listening to understand why there are some challenges that remain unaddressed up to this point in our development. If we are to get, my judgment is that if we are to get to the double-digit type of growth that we want to get during the course of this year, then we have to remove all the obstacles, all the traditional barriers, all the roadblocks in order to make sure that industry is able to do the best that industry can do. And my question, therefore, is, given the fact that we have a very well-established, highly reputable rum industry in Barbados, we know that we are using local inputs like water. We know that we are using aging methods which are unique and so on. What is the concern that your ministry has with respect to geographical indicators? What is the roadmap that your ministry has with respect to use of geographical indicators? Certainty of the content of our premium product is something that is vital if we are going to be able to market that premium product across continental United States, continental Europe, continental Africa, which are the markets that we must now command as having the oldest and probably the finest product in the world. but we cannot do so easily unless we use the same strategies of geographical indicators that our competitors have overtaken us and have started to use.
Thank you for that question, Minister. You're absolutely correct. There's no doubt that those products and countries that use geographical indicators, they see tremendous benefits. I will let the CEO of the BIDC speak to those benefits as we go through. But broadly speaking, there has been effort made, and I would say tremendous effort made by former minister responsible for industry, Mr. Ronald Toppin. I think that's when the geographical indicator discussion would have actually commenced. And significant headway was made at that point in time. The challenge that you have with a geographical indicator is that once you put that out there on a product, every product or most of the products who want to be able to export by using that geographical indicator want to benefit from the mileage and the marketing power of that geographical indicator, they have to subscribe to the standards of the geographical indicator. So of course, invariably, when you're bringing multiple players from an industry together, from a sector together, and you're asking them to agree on one set way of doing things, one set way of producing a product, you will invariably find that there will be some friction, especially when you've had players that have been doing it one way for hundreds of years, as is the case with rum. So we've had discussions with all the various producers, and we've had meetings. Robust discussion has taken place, and we're hoping that we're getting closer and closer to a healthy middle ground that would allow us to see the geographical indicator come to fruition in a way that will benefit all of the players and no one feels disadvantaged by the geographical indicator being out there. So that's to update that we have been making some progress, but the challenge now is being able to find a workable geographical indicator solution and orientation that will benefit all of the players and that each one can subscribe to fully. I'll pass over now to, and let me just say in closing on that point, that there is an intention to have further dialogue and to bring all of the industry players again together. I was in a previous capacity before when the last discussion took place, and now I'm in a new capacity. So I'm hoping that I can bring the players together very soon to be able to see how we can advance those discussions and how we can resolve any of the concerns, challenges, issues, hurdles, so that we can get this geographical indicator put in place in the shortest possible time. I'll hand you over now to the CEO of BIDC, and he can speak more in a broad way, in a broad sense, relative to what a geographical indicator really is and how we foresee that it will benefit one of the oldest products known to man and one of the best in from Barbados, our rum. CEO.
Okay, good afternoon to the Parliament. Well, as far as the GA is concerned, there's, pardon? Yeah, sorry. Mark Hill, CEO of BIDC, Export Barbados. As far as the GA is concerned, there's a number of issues that we have to address concerning this particular instrument for moving the industry forward. First, what I want to underscore is that a GA is used in the agricultural food business sector, primarily to help create commercial value for those products that are generated by those specific markets. So for example, we have, if it is cheese, this cheese is coming from a particular destination, it is made this specific way, the milk is coming from these particular cows, and these cows have this particular background or historical association with that geographic space. The issue that we're dealing with here, particularly with our GI, is that our GI has been built out on a framework of reputation. And therefore, finding the geographic specificity to root the GI in Barbados is kind of complex, because what we have based on that reputation argument is a lot of marketing arguments emerging that is impacting on the type of GI and how the GI should be shaped and how it should be formed. So to that end, when we look at our goals as an economy, particularly how do we grow our rum beyond its $80 million threshold, because that's how much we've been making in rum, and we want to move that at least to 100 million to 150 million US over the short term. how does the GI help us to achieve that? So that's one of the things that we have to look at in a significant way. So when we look at the numbers, the bulk rum aspect are the top manufacturers in our tier system. You have two top exporters, one that is doing around 15 million per annum in exports, another that is doing around 10 million, and then at the bottom end we have manufacturers that are doing just around $300,000. So when we have such a broad spectrum of players in this industry, what it's saying to us is that we have to approach our GI in a more innovative way, and pretty much using the European model, whereby they have a layer type application for GIs, for products of origin, and also for products of tradition. We're thinking that we have to approach the GI in a broader framework and not just in a narrow framework. In addition to that, we also believe that our geographic indicator needs to have some more scientific support behind it to root it in our geographical context. So as I wrap up, for example, we know that there's 4 key inputs into rum. So of course we know that the water, the molasses, which is imported for most of these manufacturers. So none of the manufacturers, except for one who doesn't really export, uses 100% Barbados molasses. The rest of them import all of their molasses. Maybe just source some from the Ministry of Agriculture, just a percentage. The yeast in particular, some manufacturers import, and there's some that cultivate their own yeast on island. And we think that that is the area, that is the hot spot that we can focus on, so that we can do a biotech study of the yeast strains that we have on island, and that should give us a sense of what is unique about our rums. From a scientific point of view, our bacteria, because we're a small island, we're out in the Atlantic, we're coral reef island, which means that our environment is more alkaline. So there's some biomarker dimensions that we can draw on to help really root us in our geographical context. So what we're saying is that we need a broad approach to the GI, one that facilitates growth and expansion and allow for a broader industrial model and not just a traditional heritage model. Thank you very much.
And I want to thank you, Mr. Hill, for the exposition. And I asked another question then. How practical is it, even at this preliminary, well, I don't want to say preliminary, but even at this stage of the considerations, would it be to look at an approach which sees us harness those brands which are our premium brands, recognizing that there are a variety of rums which are on the Barbados market, but what we really want to do is to make sure that the standard and quality of the very best is what we are pushing across the waters internationally?
Yeah, it's a good question, Minister. It's something that I have thought of myself, and something that requires some research, and I believe that the team will undertake that research in short order. Relative to how do we do it, if we can have a geographical indicator that is specific to premium brands, and then other brands that are not considered premium.
Honourable Minister, would you kindly raise your volume, come a bit closer to the mic? Thank you.
Apologies. Yeah. Is this better?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. What I was saying is that, you know, I've given thought to the idea of having a bit of a differentiation in the geographical indicators relative to premium brands versus non-premium brands, to see if that can allow us to move ahead with getting the geographical indicator, especially as it relates to those premium brands, which have the capacity to earn us a lot more in terms of our exports and our foreign exchange. So it is something that is going to take the attention of the ministry, and something that we're going to look into to see if there's a way that we can classify and do the geographical indicator based on that classification.
I'm obliged. Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you very much, Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Michael West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I also want to echo the sentiments of the Honourable Member from St. James Central and congratulate the Honourable Minister on his appointment. I'm sure that with his eagerness and his youthful exuberance, he will be very successful. Now, I recognize that one of the stated goals of your ministry is to create and safeguard a world-class liberalized telecommunications and ICT networks. And as the Honourable Member from St. James Central said, as he described the telecommunications industry in Barbados is probably best described as an oligopoly, given that there are only 2 or 3 carriers. Now, the Minister brought up number portability as a vexing issue, especially with small businesses. Another vexing issue is quality of service that you frequently see all around the country. How does the ministry suggest that we deal with that issue?
A very good question, Honourable Member. It is something, again, that would have come out in those sessions that I would have had with COTED, in the COTED session, ICT, and also with the Caribbean Telecommunications Union as well, where there's heavy discussion going into this area of quality of service and how can we guarantee a certain quality of service. I will ask once again our Director of Digital Infrastructure, Mr. Clifford Bostic, to give more details into that aspect of the discussions that have been taking place regionally, and of course he, as a person who has been interacting with some of well, all of the telecom companies here, he may be able to give us more insight into how far along that discussion has gone. Mr. Bostic?
Yes, good afternoon again. Clifford Bostic, Director of Digital Infrastructure in MIST. Yes, it's a very interesting question. It is a question that takes up a lot of our time in working out what it is we need to do in the markets in Barbados. One of the things that we have done in the past is to have we had a mobile audit where we audited the mobile services, all the service providers in the market. At that time, it was Digicel, Liberty Global, as well as Ozone. We had the International Telecommunications Union come in with consultants and do a professional audit for us. It was the first of its kind. They confirmed some of what we knew in terms of where there were dropouts, where there were bad services on mobiles, as you were most of this took place when people were traveling and making calls, connecting using internet on mobile, voice calls, even things like WhatsApp and SMS would get interrupted. And so there were many recommendations made, and these were implemented. There was most of what we knew, for example, in the South Coast, in Bridgetown, in Warrens, in Holetown, in Spicetown, where you have lots of buildings. There was bad coverage, which required additional cell sites on buildings, and these are called co-located sites, where you have more than one provider providing services on these buildings. There was things such as interference, which accounted for over 35 places in Barbados where there was interference. What the providers did was they implemented filters on the antenna, and they also provided spaces between the frequencies or the spectrum or gaps so that interference will be reduced. Those were done successfully, but the major challenge has been across the country in areas that you and I know on our ABC highway, as well as our highway from Highway 2A all the way into places like Mile Quarter and Boscobel. There have been lots of issues there. Some of these required the acquisition of lands as well as permission from Town and Country Planning to establish additional sites. These have been ongoing. We've got commitments from the providers to continue this work so that we on a weekly basis, a daily basis, a monthly basis, we reduce those coverage issues and we improve the quality of the service. While that's happening, you can see that based on the pandemic as well as the need for more meetings online, more virtual meetings for training, for conferences, connectivity for health matters, et cetera, et cetera. These weigh heavily on the networks. The whole world has seen dependence on internet services as countries migrate from normal operations in hard copy, where you go into offices and everything is a piece of paper, to online connectivity, doing business online. So those things have occupied our thoughts and our hard work working with the providers to make sure these improvements are recognized by our customers. Today, what I can say is that it is very difficult to quantify those improvements. We can see where the changes have been made. In some instances, some customers, because of their usual activity, won't see drastic improvements, but they will from time to time see changes in the network. And that's just mobile. Our intention is to continue on that vein, again with the International Telecommunications Union, have consultants work with us, our local teams, that is local teams within Barbados, within Digicel, within Liberty Global, as well as Ozone and KW Telecommunications Limited. And this is to make sure that for fixed services, that is the services on your landline, where you would have at your home landline voice, you would have internet, Wi-Fi, and you probably would have IPTV as well. Our aim is to have an audit done on that network with recommendations and with commitments from the service providers to close the gaps. In other words, we want to improve the quality of internet services. We call it broadband. It's an essential service for every single person in the world. It is an essential service for every single citizen in Barbados, individuals, businesses, for commercial purposes, et cetera, et cetera. So our intention is to have that done this financial year, and out of that audit will come recommendations that will be implemented, as well as we're going to set standards for quality of service. So we're going to set standards so that in the future we do not have to go through the hard work of setting up an audit, but these quality of standards will be reviewed frequently, similar to, for example, the information and communication telecommunications indices that are published by the ITU. And it is heartening to know that Barbados is ranked number 3 in the world when it comes to ICTs, the deployment of ICTs, the use of ICTs, as well as having resources that understand ICTs and that can fix ICTs and help with the establishment of ICTs. We are 3rd within the Americas, and the Americas are represented by Canada, the United States, both North America, Central America, and South America, as well as the Caribbean. And the difference between number 1, number 2, and number 3 in those rankings is insignificant. There was a year back in 2014 when St. Kitts and Nevis went past Barbados to 3rd position, and Barbados fell to 4th position. And it is interesting to note that St. Kitts and Nevis implemented a system, an online digital system to register persons who were setting up businesses in those countries very rapidly, within hours. Barbados has started that journey. You will know that CAIPO has started the journey of making it easier for businesses to set up their corporate entities within Barbados very rapidly. E-services within MIS that is being launched now, that we're working on now, will allow for the rapid deployment of businesses, the rapid deployment of services, government services, to all of our customers, all our citizens and businesses, which we hope will also incentivize the private sector to do the same and follow the same. Now, I am sure that if you take a look at what we spend on ICTs, that you will see that our money must have been well spent, because if you look at the the geographical areas within the Caribbean. If you look at the revenues generated by the Caribbean, you would see that Barbados is small in comparison to some of the major players, but we have been able to move our country to a position where we can say, look, this is an incentive for businesses to come into Barbados and set up their business because we are good at ICTs. Our struggles now lie in handling this beast called quality of service for both mobile, which we have started, and for fixed services. It is something that we will continue to work on with the service providers. We will set the standards so that they have standards to follow. These standards will come out of the audit because we will see where we are on the global stage when it comes to fixed services and the standards. By the way, our partners within Caribbean Telecommunications Union, that is within CARICOM, those 15 countries, they have been asking about the mobile audit as well as the fixed audit because they want to do the same. It is one of the ways of getting your service providers to pay attention to quality of service regardless of the demand. And that is where we are with trying to solve this huge problem that we have. One of the other things that we have implemented is the internet exchange points.
Mr. Director, sir, you certainly have to wrap up your response at this time. You've been given reasonable latitude, and so we'll ask you to wrap up, and you can always come back again.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so we have implemented internet exchange points to help us with when there are outages that are beyond our borders so that the traffic remains in Barbados and you get good service. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bossett, for that comprehensive answer. I agree with you. I think that audits are key. And since the mobile environment is ever evolving, reoccurring audits are necessary. My next question, actually a little bit more of a statement. In referencing the Honourable Mrs. Minister's opening statement on the smart city plans for Bridgetown, I'm very enthused about that, and I think it's a long time coming, given that in successive throne speeches, our government has mandated that the internet access shall be a right. So I'm glad to hear that that project has been started, and in the context of COVID, and the fact that a lot of our children had to access the internet, that is very encouraging. So my next point, or I guess my question is that given that the nature of Wi-Fi is a technology that doesn't really go past 100 to 200 feet, means that in a city environment, the application of sites is going to have to be very dense. So the economics of that design will probably need to be married with some type of payback, like advertising or marketing or implementation of surveys. Has the ministry given any thought to perhaps partnering with the Ministry of Tourism, where you can somehow marry that with surveys to tourists so they can perhaps get some payback?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, we have, I think, already engaged in conversations and discussions with the Ministry of Tourism with reference to how we can use the smart city, all of the access points, the free Wi-Fi, etc., to be able to not only provide services to our locals, but also to provide access to tourists and to ensure that our tourism product is built out using that digital infrastructure. One of the key persons here who has been leading the smart city discussion would be our Director for Digital Solutions, Mr. Owen Herwood, and I would ask him at this point in time to come in and to give a more comprehensive response to that question.
I'm Owen Herwood, Director of Digital Solutions. As it relates to the Smart City program, we would have started installation of Wi-Fi access points in November, and we are approximately 25% complete. As it relates to the density, we are at present looking at the green areas and the areas where persons congregate. However, as part of this project, we are looking to do areas that have housing population, like the Nelson Street area, the Reed Street, etc., Subtle Street areas, because when the project started, we were mostly looking at getting persons back into Bridgetown and giving them free Wi-Fi so that there can be connectivity as they move around town. We would have spoken to not just tourism, we would also have been engaging, in discussions with 2 vendors to look at how we can monetize this project. And we are looking at how we can do things like advertise on the Wi-Fi, etc. So those are 2 areas that we are looking at to try to monetize this project.
Thank you, sir. My last question relates to the massive undertaking that the Honourable Minister described in the project called PSMP. This is obviously hugely important as the mandate of government is to facilitate economic growth, and obviously one of the key inputs to growth in the economy is productivity, efficiency, and ease of business. But as your ministry seeks to undertake on this operation, whereby obviously citizens' data will be migrated into the space, how is your ministry going to deal with the obvious question of security of citizens' data?
Excellent question. As I would have mentioned in my opening statement, cybersecurity is one of the most critical things that's capturing the attention of our ministry at this point in time. And not only cybersecurity, but data protection. We have even implemented a data protection commissioner who is Lisa Graves, and she is right now a team of 1, but we're looking to build out an entire team around data protection, because we understand that once our citizens start to interact with government services going forward, we're going to have a lot more data coming into the system, and we must be able to protect that data so that citizens are encouraged to continue to utilize the services. We also understand in the environment such as this, where because of COVID and because of increased use of digital technologies and in the internet in general, there's the proliferation of fraud and different activities that take place out there in the IT space. So we are very mindful of the need not only to provide a secure environment through data security, but also to be able to ensure that our data is as secure as it is, and that persons can feel secure in putting their data in our hands. I believe that should suffice at this point in time. But just to say and just to underscore that data protection is one of the critical things that's taking the attention of the ministry at this point in time.
Thank you, Minister. Chair, I bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just 2 questions for the Honourable Minister and his team. The first one relates to the Shared Services Subprogram 067. It was referred to before in the reference to the Smart City program or project. The question I have, because I recognize that there is funding, obviously in the coming year's estimates, and a pretty sizable increase in subsequent year in terms of the forward estimates, 23-24 and 24-25. Now, this government from 2018, in our manifesto of 2018, spoke to a focus on towns. And building out towns. So there was a theme coming through in relation to towns. Now, we also have the work and report of the Thorne Commission, that groundbreaking piece of research, and I think it will fashion what Barbados looks like in the future. The chair of that commission knows exactly how I feel about that work. But that report also has or makes special recommendations in relation to towns generally. The question I have, while we're starting with Bridgetown, and I agree we ought to be commencing any program like this with our capital city, the question is, what is the plan of the ministry in relation to the other towns that will need similar attention in relation to making those towns smart, making Wi-Fi available to both the commercial and the residential stakeholders who occupy, who live in, who work in, who earn in those spaces? That's my first question. Speaking of towns. Spite Stone included, but I was really thinking about Oistins and
Spite Stone.
some of the other towns.
You gotta be specific. You gotta be specific, honorable member.
No. Seriously, I'm speaking
Towns
about
in general.
towns generally
Of
because
course.
the Labour Party's manifesto and the Thorne Commission report really has a flavor of addressing our urban spaces. So I'm speaking about towns generally, but I represent St. Peter and Spite Sound, so I mean, that goes without saying.
Thank you so much. Yes, honorable member, you're absolutely correct. There currently is a focus on Bridgetown as a capital city, and you can call it a pilot if you were. It is really going to be this gold standard as to how we can then roll this same initiative out across all of the other towns. The whole idea, the objective, and the purpose of this ministry is to make all of Barbados smart. So it's not just, we call it the Smart City Initiative because we're highlighting the need for our capital city where there is not only the hub of commercial activity, but there's also a dense population, dense demographics in that area. And not only that, it is one of our, I guess, key tourist attractions because tourists will go there naturally to shop and to partake of our various activities and the cultural components. But so that we're going to center our energy there first. And with that, then we can then replicate across the other towns across the length and breadth of Barbados, not least of which is Spite Stone. But I will hand over at this point in time to once again, Owen Herod, Mr. Owen Herod, and he will give some more flesh to that matter.
As was said by the minister, this can be seen as a pilot. And while during the course of this financial year, we were not fortunate to have the funds available to us to pursue the other towns, we are really looking now at seeing how we can fully roll out this project. The access points and the Wi-Fi is only a part of this project. You would know that we are also looking at things like augmented reality, which would be the apps that would give all that information to visitors, etc. We are also expecting to work with the Ministry of Public Service, the Ministry of Public Works, as it relates to parking, smart parking. So these are the two initiatives that we are looking at during the course of the coming financial year. And as we complete those, we will then be in a position to look at the lessons learned, etc. And if given the resources, we'll roll out to all the towns that you need us to roll out.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think I discerned from the response that what was said may not have been written down as part of the plan, but in response to my question, that is the route that you are going. That is just the impression that I got, and I hope, therefore, if I'm correct, that you would make what has been said by yourself and your officer officially a part of the plan, that the focus will be on rolling out in the towns as well. I will point out that in many of the town centers, particularly those identified not just in the manifesto but also in the Thorn Commission report, because the Thorn Commission report identifies additional town centers, there are also relatively densely populated areas that would definitely benefit because there are residences, and there's also business economic activity, including the tourism activity that Minister referred to. My second question has to do with the export thrust. And I'm really asking this because in my interactions with Barbadians, as well as constituents, residents of St. Peter, there sometimes is the feeling that pursuing manufacturing and exporting is probably not a good use of resources because our input costs are so high. I sometimes speak by way of explanation to pursuing niches as opposed to trying to move into general manufacturing and exports on a large scale. I'd like to hear from you, Minister, or maybe from Mr. Hill, what are, assuming that I'm correct, if I'm not correct, then you can explain why I'm not, but assuming that I'm correct, I'd like to get a perspective on what are those niche areas that BIDC and the ministry are pursuing in terms of our manufacturing. I know we spoke about rum earlier, but there may be others that we are pursuing, and I'd like to hear some discussion, some information sharing on that matter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Minister. You're absolutely correct in your interpretation of the situation. Exporting is critical. And of course, some of the areas that we have as a legacy have used or chosen to focus on for export, some of those industries now need to be pivoted. We need to, in some ways, build those out further where we can and exhaust those in new and innovative ways. But we also need to pivot towards new industries and nascent industries. Of course, we have green and green tech and renewable energies and a whole host of other areas within the life sciences portfolio of activities as well. I will let the CEO delve into those further and to give you some specifics in terms of those nascent industries, but just to agree with you 100% that we as a ministry are going to be seeing how we can use the innovation side of this ministry to marry with the industry side so that and science, so that we can build out new, robust, resilient industries and sectors for the benefit of all of Barbados. So I'll hand over now to CEO Marhill.
Thank you, Minister. First, what I want to highlight is that the traditional exporting participants right now, let's do about just around 250 million. We anticipate that something like with the GI, we'll get maybe a 15% bump in terms of additional exports. But layered on top of that, to get to the growth that we're looking at the other area of the food sciences in a big way. As you can see, we'll be doing International Food Science Center. And what that would allow us to do is to begin to explore, for example, a guy who's making juice at the side of the road. He can bring his golden apple juice, or wherever the case may be, to the Food Science Center. We do the analysis, we standardize his formulae. We work in conjunction with Barbados National Standards Institute, make sure that this product is of international standards. So the Food Science Center is doing all that in the background. All that small business person needs to do is focus on marketing. We will take care of the production of that particular product. So that's on one side in terms of juice, but let's say pepper sauce or sweet and sour sauce or even a barbecue sauce for that matter. So we're building the capacity through this center to be able to scale up and help our small business people be able to export so they don't have to worry now about supply. They just need to focus now on the demand side, and we are also helping them on the demand side as well in terms of market intelligence and stuff like that. So that is a key building block for the corporation, is a shared use facility. So you can come in, you can book your space, book your time, and you only have to pay for the time of use. So as opposed to the overhead and the capital expenditure that a small business person has to look for, this facility addresses that particular need and therefore carries the capital cost for a small business person. So it's going to be very, very revolutionary, and we plan to build out a number of what we call these OEM facilities across different sectors. So for the fashion folks, we're right now doing the TOR and looking at how do we get fashion designers to be able to scale up their particular product. We want to align them with key markets. Also, furniture manufacturers as well. We just came back from Guyana, so we're looking at how do we do OEM facilities, similar type shared use model around furniture production, so that the traditional sectors are addressed in a significant way. But layered on top of that, the new areas that we're looking to focus on is something as simple in the clean tech space as wood pellets. So we just came back from Guyana again, and we have signed into an agreement whereby the off-take agreement of that sawdust from the sawmills, saw residues, will be shipped back to Barbados, and we'll be producing a high-quality wood pellet that will be going into the European market. As we know, the European market is moving away from coal and have their carbon credits and emission standards to meet. So these are new product opportunities for Barbados, and that's forecast to give us between 75 to 100 million US dollars in additional export capacity. And then we're going to move even a step further and look at taking that same wood pellet, extracting out the hydrogen, and what leaves behind is something called carbon, and that allows us to enter into what we call the carbon black export space. So activated carbon space. So what we're doing is focusing on layered growth opportunities. So for example, between the hydrogen, green hydrogen coming from wood pellets, and the green hydrogen and the activated carbon, you're talking about another 250 million US dollars in opportunity. And then layered on top of that now the life sciences. And why the life sciences? Because every year University of West Indies output around 500 students in the area of the life sciences, whether it be biochem, biology, chemistry. So that's why you will see that the nature of our small businesses are primarily bio-based, chemical-based. People making soaps, food products, and stuff like that, because that's our strength. We're really a bio-island. And the reality is that a lot of folks who want to get into the medical sector, but they didn't get into medical school, they then choose this particular path. So we believe that the life sciences is not only a cutting-edge advantage for us, but it's also our national strength. And therefore, we expect to see new medical export opportunities come in to also augment what we're doing going forward. And that is another 250 million that is coming in the pipeline. Soon, our minister should soon be launching one of our first life science companies that is coming to the table, and we expect this sector to grow extremely rapidly, especially when we develop and deploy the life science park as well. So we're not shooting in the dark. We have specific targets, we have pathways and strategies that we're following, but if the strategies are designed to meet at the entrepreneurial level, so regardless of the size of your company, we are going to help you to export, regardless of its size, big or small. Up to today, we got an order for 2,000 breadfruit. So if there's anybody in your constituency that have a breadfruit tree, you can please get them to contact us. The demand for breadfruit from Barbados, the Bajan breadfruit, is so big. Right now, we're doing around 10,000 kg a week in breadfruit, and we cannot find enough breadfruit. So if there's persons in communities, there's a website that's available called Bajan Breadfruits at exportbarbados.org. You can go on there, you can register your breadfruit tree, and once we see it registered there, somebody comes out, analyze how much fruit you have forecast to come onto the into the pipeline. Then there's exporters and also off-takers in Canada, America, and England that are ready to buy that breadfruit that's growing on your tree. So you don't even have to sell the berry fruit. The berry fruit is already sold even before it finished grow. So that is where we are. So we're creating a broad export ecosystem that every Barbadian can participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, Head of the ADC. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Thank you very much. Minister, may I commend you for your exceedingly thorough presentation and how it was structured. It went a long way to helping people to understand upfront the complexities of your ministry and exactly your remit. Now, the one thing I have to raise, I want to commend the former minister as well for her sterling work within this ministry. We have done a lot in a very, very short space of time. We're not yet there, but I think anyone looking on can see the improvements that Barbados has made in the areas of information technology and in the way we do business. When we knew a long time ago that we had to move into the digital space, we knew a long time ago that we needed to embrace technology and utilize more virtual meetings and all of the tools available to us to advance ourselves, but there was a reluctance. We as a people don't like to change unless we absolutely have to. We prefer to do things the way they were always done, simply because they were always done that way. So even when COVID hit, and we were able to seamlessly transfer a number of the operations of government into the digital space and to work remotely and to do online applications, and even for the online learning for the students, it did not happen at that point in time. What a lot of Barbados did not realize is that the government had been steadily pressing towards that, and things were being put in place to do it. So as I said, we've done a lot, and I wish to commend the ministry for its innovation, no pun intended, and the former minister. And Minister, you have some huge shoes to fill. So you have to pick up exactly where we left off. Now, what is concerning for me is that we've gotten a fair distance, we've gotten 80% of the way in many aspects, but we failed to complete that 81 to 100%. I use, for example, I went to do some business at the Barbados Revenue Authority, and the bulk of the business was done online. The payment was to be made by credit card. The credit card information had to be sent to the BRA, so they knew what credit card was going to be used. But I then had to go down to the BRA to actually swipe the credit card. And I went down to the BRA, and I put the credit card in, and it was one of those chip cards that you normally have to enter a PIN on. And I didn't have to use my PIN because the BRA is a secured facility and a trusted vendor. So once the card was put in and they entered the amount was credited. And I thought to myself, as I stood up, that I had stood up in line for maybe an hour and 15 minutes to get to that point to insert a credit card, the information for which they already had, the transaction for which had been done online, but I literally had to find myself there to complete a process that did not actually require any intervention or authentication on my part. Now, we've gotten far. We've gotten far. Anybody can see the strides that we've made, but it's now the press to complete those processes. We need to be 100% online in transactions, right? There's no reason I should do an application. I should be able to do an application online, but then still have to present myself in person for any part of that application unless it's to verify my identity, something immigration or identity card-wise or something. But other than that, normal transactions, I can buy anything online and have it shipped to Barbados by people who don't know me, right? It should not be that in Barbados, people interacting with government have to find themselves in a line. It decreases productivity. I mean, I stood up and chatted with people for an hour and a half. I saw somebody going into the gym. I had no idea they even went to the gym, and we talked about the gym. But apart from that, anecdotal experience and being able to chat with some people, that would have been an hour and 15 minutes of my time wasted. So I want to know, Minister, what is the intention of your department in completing that last 20%? Right? How soon can we get there that our processes, our online processes, become 100% online? What is the holdup to it, and what are you all putting in place to actually complete that process? As I say, I'm asking for a friend.
Well, I'll advise you so you can advise your friend. You are absolutely correct, Minister. It is something that vexes me as well. And I think that in 2022 Barbados, most everything should be able to be done online. We as the ministry that is primarily responsible for that, we are going to drive the innovations as much as we can. But what you're alluding to here, Minister, is the fact that our ministry really cross-cuts almost every other ministry and every other department. Innovation, science, technology will cross-cut education, agriculture, MTW. It will cross-cut almost every other ministry. So when a person interacts with another part of government, whether it be BRA, whether it be Ministry of Environment, what have you, then to apply for a license in one instance, or to some other mechanism that they're seeking, or some other service that they're seeking, whilst MIST plays a role in that, we recognize that there's still some aspects of government that need to be brought up to speed. In other words, some areas of government are still lagging behind. And it may be that there are some cases where legislative changes have to take place. I have already, in speaking with my ministry officials, I have said that the legislative agenda has to take a priority for us going forward, because as much as we go forward aggressively on the digitizing and the digital solutions that we're offering and bringing to the fore, we need to also ensure that our legislative agenda keeps pace, and in some cases goes ahead of us to contemplate what else will need to change legislatively so that we can then plant those digital solutions on top of. So I give a real life example, or not a real life example, but to give an analogy. You want to do X service, and X service can be done fully online, but then you interact with a government agency that says by its legislation, or by a statutory body that says by its legislation it is prohibited from doing it in that way. It has to be done by paper, or it has to be done through this Form B or Form A, and different things like that. We need to see how we can go forward in looking at the legislative changes that need to take place so that the digital framework and infrastructure that we're seeking to build out is able to keep pace with what we're intending, which is a revolution of digital services across Barbados. So it frustrates me as a citizen to have to be forced in many cases to go to physical locations to do simple things that I think should be done online and fully online. So I feel your pain, and I feel the pain of all of our citizens and all of our people. And we as a ministry will undertake to see how we can work. That is my vision, to see how we can sit down with all of the other ministerial portfolios, ask them how is it that we as MIST can improve your service delivery to the citizens, and then we build our infrastructure around those needs of the respective ministry heads. I can see that my director of digital solutions is biting and chomping at the bit to get in here as well. So I would allow Mr. Owen Herwood to come in and say a few words on this same point.
Thank you, Minister. While I cannot speak to BRA and what they are currently doing, what I can say is that we are pushing EasyPay Plus, I should say, as the payment platform for government. You must recognize that COVID threw us, in this case, a positive ball, in that everyone wanted to come online at the same time. However, we have situations where a lot of the ministries, a lot of the departments do not have proper management information systems. So to talk about bringing them online right away is not the right thing to do. I'm going to give you a good example. I'll use the Ministry of Transport and Works as an example. We were asked to bring them online within a 2-month period. And what we did was to move to get persons paying the driver's license online. But you still have the regulation test. You still have to schedule a test. You still have to do the test. So there are a whole set of processes that need to be looked at. What we ended up doing now is developing a full system for them as it relates to driver's license, just so that we can cover all of those processes. But these things don't happen overnight. This takes time, and while we should be in a position to roll out their full system within the next 6 weeks, I mentioned that to say that there are a lot of variables involved. And while getting to from 80% to 100% may seem like only 20%, there's a lot involved in getting that 20%.
Okay, so I hear you. So let me fill in the other part that I left out. So as I was complaining speaking to the young lady, like, why they have to actually come here? When I thought I had to sign, she goes, well, Minister, you need to talk to MIST. So the BRA person was telling me that I need to talk to MIST and that I'm in the perfect position to do something. The point is this. BRA or licensing authority will say that MIST has to pull this together. MIST is saying that the internal departments have to regulate their business, sort out their business, and bring it online or streamline it. The point is, we then get stuck with everybody getting to a common point of progress and then pausing. And quite frankly, I may be being a little bit unfair to you, but at some point, somebody needs to put out their hand and say, it is I will take the responsibility for it. And I think that you in the perfect position, because MIST must have the overall vision for the government electronically. MIST must have the overall technological progress concept for the government across the board. There should be somebody who is liaising with all departments thinking, how can we complete the process for you? Right? Because as it stands now, people pat themselves on the back that we can fill out the form online. But from the time you make me leave my office and go down there and spend time in a line, and not just BRA, whatever process requires somebody to turn up for payment, that I can buy Kentucky online. I can buy Kentucky without leaving my house. I can buy groceries from the supermarket without leaving my house. There's a pudding and sauce lady. Can you believe it? There's a pudding and sauce lady that takes the money transfers. And I get a sense somebody collect the sauce. Well, my good friend, the member for Christchurch, West Central, is telling me you can buy pigs online. I hope you're actually understanding where I'm coming from. We are so close. And I'm sorry to put this on you, but unless somebody actually accepts the responsibility for taking the other or coordinating to take us to the 100%, it has to start somewhere. I've given you the BRA one, so if somebody can please follow that up and save people from stamping that line, then great. And then when you finish there, move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, because until a decision is made to complete the process and somebody assumes responsibility for it, then we're going to be stuck at just barely good enough and not excellent. Right, so that's, Minister, please, I prefer your technical people to answer that, and you don't commit yourself to answer on this one, right? But it is something that must be in your contemplation, and it's something you must have a plan for. And if you don't have a plan for it, they suggest that you actually get one quickly, because it is the difference between a modern, progressive, and efficient Barbados and just being at the head of a pack that is just not good enough.
Thank you so much, Minister. I agree 100%. You're right. We don't want to have a situation where we progress to a certain stage and then we stop or flop. So it is something that is capturing my attention as I've been observing and learning and growing. And I would say to you that a lot of what you're saying here and what it entails is business process re-engineering. We actually have to go into various units and departments of government, see their entire processes, and see how we can either deconstruct them or reconstruct them within a digital environment. It is, as Director here would have said, it is a lengthy process. It does require a significant time. But I would say to you, even though you said to me not to take the lead on it or not to commit myself to it, I would say to you, I'm fully committed to engaging in that process with each ministry, each department, each unit, to see how we can deconstruct and reconstruct to ensure that the mandate of MISS, which is to digitize and to ensure that the digital infrastructure of our country is built out so that our citizens can do exactly what you're talking about, get back to business in the most time efficient ways and to be able to carry it. I often say it this way: I want to be able to sit down in my bed at night at 12 o'clock in the midnight and be able to do business with the government of Barbados. And that's the vision that I have for every single citizen. For every single citizen, I want them to be able to have that same comfort, that same luxury of being able to in the comfort of their own home, interact with government and see a process through from beginning to end. So I'm right there with you, and I will say that it is MISS that will take the lead in terms of how we will go into those various ministries with time to ensure that we can build out and re-engineer processes that will support the digital future that we're moving fast towards.
Thank you.
Honourable Member for Christchurch, West Central.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first of all congratulate the Minister for his appointment, of course, and for moving on reserve order in order to augment his mandate. I want to say to the Minister, and this is something that has bedeviled myself personally because it affected my pockets, and I am sure some constituents from the great epicenter of Christchurch West Central, and by extension, I think it has certainly caused the angst of many Barbadians, and this is the whole issue of roaming. I am thankful that what I saw last week with the Prime Minister striking a deal, I call it the real deal, as it relates to roaming. I think that is a breakthrough moment in your ministry. I want you to elucidate on this deal and to explain to Barbadians the issues confronting us previously and how you were able to solve these issues. Because I think for persons like myself who's unlettered as it relates to the communications sphere, that this is important for us to understand what were the challenges before and what is the new deal for Barbadians as it relates to roaming and how we can assess this facility with rates that are comfortable to us in our pockets. Thanks.
Thank you for that question, Minister, Honourable Member. You're absolutely right again. Roaming has been something that has bedeviled most of us, especially those who travel throughout the Caribbean for the purpose of business, not only for travel for the purposes of pleasure, but those in particular who travel for business. And the challenge was that the way that roaming was supposed to work was that if you were switching from one carrier, one telecoms carrier to another, there would be a charge to facilitate that, like an administrative charge, to facilitate that switching between networks. Where we have the difficulty is that when you move from here on Digicel's network and land in Jamaica on Digicel's network, you are still being charged exorbitant roaming fees. You're on the same network. So it has been something that most Caribbean nations and governments have recognized to be a problem and a bugbear, and many of them have committed to fixing it and addressing it. As you rightly said, our Prime Minister has been one of the outspoken voices in this area, and I believe that there has been significant work done to address it. Now, we've been calling for an absolute removal, zeroing out of roaming once you're going network, same network, once you're staying on the same network. I think that there have been significant discussions that have taken place, and whilst we may not be at the stage where, or we may not be able to get to zeroing out roaming altogether, we have been able, I think, to come to a place where we have a very low fixed rate. And I would allow at this point in time Charles Bostic, again, our Director for Digital Infrastructure, to come in, and he will give further information and further elucidation relative to those discussions that have taken place with the various carriers across the Caribbean region. Mr. Bostic?
Thank you very much, Minister. Yes, roaming has been one of the difficult things that we have been dealing with for quite a long time. There was a point in time when both carriers had implemented what they term home rate roaming. In other words, if you were a Barbadian and traveling to any of the Caribbean countries, you would pay the same fees as if you were at home. Both Digicel and Cable and Wireless had implemented those a long time ago, but for some reason they reversed. Both of them reversed those services. So we have been trying since then for quite some time to bring to the table no roaming rates across the Caribbean region, and for specific reasons. The first of it was that both Digicel and Cable and Wireless, the two major providers of telecommunication services in the Caribbean, have established basically a single space across the region. In other words, the equipment and services that they have set up across the region is as if it was one place without any borders, without any seas or large rivers in between. Each of our countries is surrounded by ocean, by the Caribbean Sea, but their infrastructure is set up as if it was one platform, one single land space. So there was no real reason for them to charge us these roaming rates. That's one. Secondly, we were asking for home-based rates when you travel across the region, especially for mobile services, where a person will be connecting to their mobile device and using data of which you know the rates are pretty high. Data rates can cripple you. If you're using data for roaming, if you're using data for connecting to a virtual meeting, a conference, for training, for business, all that kind of stuff, it will cost you quite a bit. And so we were asking them to change that, not to interfere with what was coming in from visitors. In other words, a visitor coming out of Europe or North America or Africa or some other part of the world into the Caribbean and traveling across the Caribbean would be subject to roaming simply because they're changing from one network to another, and the handshake and the various contracts between the operators would come into play. So let's say, for example, if you're coming from Oftel, for example, into the Caribbean, the rates you're paying part will go to Oftel, part will go to either Digicel or Flow or whoever else was within the region at that particular time. So we have had our Prime Minister, the Honourable Mayor Motley, we have had Dr. Keith Mitchell from Grenada, as well as all the Prime Ministers across CARICOM who are part of Quartet, as you know it, sit down with us and discuss this issue of roaming. And the aim is to eliminate roaming. What you have seen recently is an agreement which says the operators are assuring us that they will get to the stage where they will offer citizens in the Caribbean region a suitable rate that is, one, predictable, two, that is not expensive. 3, that they will continue to work with us on reaching the stage where roaming will no longer exist. And as I said earlier on in my response, there was a time when both of them were offering home rate roaming. In other words, you're paying as though you're still at home. There's no reason for them to ask for roaming fees anymore. And as you also know, the governments across CARICOM are looking to have a single ICT space for business, one that allows us to delve an economy that is fit for purpose, one that we need now more so than ever, so that we can be competitive. The European Union is a very good example of this. They have a single economy. They operate as though they're in a single space. You don't pay for roaming anymore in the European Union, and we will reach that stage. What the details that you're asking for, what is the rates like, we do not know that yet. But we have a commitment, and they've signed this agreement and agreed to it at the highest level in Grenada last week. So we look forward to that, and we will continue to press for that. So that's just one of several things that we will be looking at. The other area we're looking at as well is the data rates we're paying for, because the data rate implicitly impacts on what you're going to be paying for as you roam. When you move from Barbados to Grenada, St. Lucia, Dominica, St. Vincent, Jamaica, you are going to be connecting using data. You're going to be connecting using a commodity that is costly. We want to see those rates come down as well, so that it incentivizes persons, individuals, and businesses to travel across the region to do business. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, your ministry is entitled Industry, Innovation, Science, and Technology. And for me, there's one particular area that has piqued my interest, and that is the science. We were faced over the last couple of years with two, what we call the twin existential threats of climate change and COVID-19. It has shown the importance of scientists and scientific bodies around the world. My question to you, does your ministry have a plan in place to form a scientific body? So for instance, that we can have in rapid time a response to these things, and then look at the other things, like the other emerging realities, the phytopharmaceuticals, the biosecurity that will become an important part of our protection of our borders, etc. How we will speak to, for instance, the new realities that the electrons from the plants will become the new renewable energy, and the whole trust in terms of ensuring that there is a reduction of our greenhouse gases and the effects thereof. What is the plan in place to have scientific body to respond to these things in Barbados, so that we will be able to fight off these existential threats and the new realities that you just mentioned? Thanks.
That's an excellent question, Minister. I will allow, you touched on two different areas there, science proper and then also the biodiversity, etc. So I'm going to actually ask two directors to jump in there, the CEO of BIDC, Mr. Hill, on the life sciences part, and then obviously part and not park, but he will also talk about the life sciences park. And then I'll also ask Director Charles Cyrus to speak more in a fulsome manner relative to science in general. And I can say to you that we are taking science seriously in this ministry. We have created not only one but two programs in particular that relate to science. One would have been the science camps, the Science and Technology Summer Camp, and also which focuses on STEAM, STEAM, and science, technology, energy, I think, arts and mathematics, I think, is still the main M there. And also we're focusing on the robotics collaboration and education project. And those two programs themselves focus on building out a scientific ethos amongst our young people. And I think that that is what is going to make the difference now here and going forward. And then I'll allow Mr. Hill to speak on the life sciences part of your question. So Mr. Cyrus first.
Charles Cyrus, Director, Science, Market Research and Innovation. I just wanted to speak in relation to science. Our focus for the coming year will be on, as we continue, because this is not a new focus, will be on science and technology popularization. As you hear popularization, you might wonder what does that really mean. Popularization really is about getting the general public to be excited about science. It's about closing the gap in knowledge between the scientists and members of the general public. In relation to, so there are a number of activities under that theme, I would say, of popularization of science and technology. One of the programs that we'll be rolling out continue. It did not take place in the previous year because of the pandemic, but I want to highlight the Science and Technology Festival, which is a collaboration between University of the West Indies and MIST. And what it does is to put science on the microscope, basically. It's like, I mean, some individuals might even refer to it as a fair, but we just put this twist on it and call it a science festival. And the festival brings together all areas of science under one roof, where we're showcasing science, and we're trying to explain the link between science and technology and development. So you see the importance of science. And the participants in the festival ranges from the school system, as the minister mentioned earlier. The work of MIST would often interface with various ministries. One of the ministries that we see a natural relationship with is the Ministry of Education and the educational system. So here we bring together young people at the primary level, the secondary level, and also the tertiary level, because obviously it's a collaboration between MIST and the university. So throughout that, we give the young people an opportunity to see science in action. We give them opportunity for young aspiring scientists to interface with senior scientists and researchers. And so part of that program also give researchers at university an opportunity to showcase what is taking place at the university, because often the members of the general public sometimes think that the university is a hill up there, and they're not really conscious of the work that they're doing. But we give them an opportunity to showcase this work and see the link between what they're doing and development. And this particular festival covers all gamuts of science, whether it's medical science, whether it's drone technology, whether it's climate change that you mentioned. I recall in 2020, we had the meteorological services and explaining weather patterns and so on, whether it's solar energy, alternative energy. So the whole gamut. And we've had medical science as well as part of that. So that is one program. Another program that I like to mention, and this is a new one, is the Mass Olympiad. And some might wonder, what is the Mass Olympiad? Well, actually, Mass Olympiad is a mass competition. It provides an opportunity for the public and parents and general and students to become excited about science. We know that mathematics is really a foundational science, but generally there's a phobia around mathematics. I know that every year in terms of CAPE examinations, and so we highlight students that do well, and very often some of the students who do CAPE mathematics do well. But those are the high flyers. But in general, we need to move more people, into that area, especially if we're talking about some of the technologies now, the 21st century technologies, the technology that are associated with the fourth industrial revolution. If we are talking about AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, those technologies have their basis in computer science and mathematics, right? So you have to have a grounding, especially if you want to be a creator of these and not necessarily a user. I mean, we need to have both. but we need to have creators as well, and you need to have that solid background in science. I mean, artificial intelligence in terms of creating is all about algorithms. This is what you normally do in terms of mathematics and so on. So we want to focus on that. And I mean, the area of mathematics really is one that there's a problem generally, throughout the Caribbean. If you look at CXC, results and so on, there's always this issue with mathematics. So we need to focus on it. We need to make math sexy, if you want to use that terminology, because we know that there's this general fear about mathematics, but it can be alive and so on. It also gives students an opportunity to be involved in a competition. I must say that the Mass Olympiad is new to Barbados. This is going to be the first one in this year, 2022, but it's not new across the world. In fact, Mass Olympiad has been an activity, what I would call a science popularization activity, since 1959. I think it started in Romania, and every year it is an international competition. In fact, in last competition, over 100 countries were represented, not any country from the Caribbean. So we have to get the Caribbean on board because we know of the importance of mathematics as that foundational science. In fact, all the evidence suggests that students who, especially at the tertiary level, that are weak in science, they tend to fall out and fall on the wayside. So we need to, one of the ways that we can actually approach, we can influence how students approach science is to make it popular and attractive for them to be a part of. So that is another program that we are introducing this year. Obviously, we talk about robotics, and our focus again here, we are trying to complement the work of the Ministry of Education, because we are aware that the Ministry of Education will be embarking on a program to introduce robotics and coding within the school system. So we are aware of that, but we don't really want to, we just want to complement, not necessarily, well, we can't take on the work of the Ministry of Education anyway, but we would like to complement it, and our focus is on social robots. And whereas, from my understanding, the work of the Ministry of Education will be on service robots. So there's a slight difference, because the social robots, there's greater interaction between the robot and human beings. And if you look at the applications that we will be focused on, is like marketing, is like in education. I mean the robot as a helper, all right? And marketing as well. So we see our focus here is on social robots. In fact, we've already started a program. Currently, we have a program that's ongoing that I've started, in which we are targeting two groups, primary levels, which is from students from age 8 to 11, and then the secondary school, which is age 11 to 15. So we have two programs that have already started. They're 10 weeks programs, and we're exposing the children to social robots, the influence, what are some of the challenges with them, what is the usefulness, even the different types of robots. I mean, because people talk about robots, but they're about in excess of 10 different classes of robots, right? So we're exposing the young people that. So our efforts in terms of science popularization is really to get young people and the general public, parents and so on, to be excited about science and technology. Or STEAM. We will not leave out the arts part of, because we know that is the mandate of the government to ensure that the arts component is not left out of the promotion.
Thank you. Just to say finally, Minister, I'm excited to see what is going to happen with the robotics program, knowing full well that it has gone full steam ahead in other countries. It is no secret that Barbados is signatory to both the Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention, which looks at persistent organic pollutants and how they pollute the atmosphere. We look at certain pesticides that we spray in the agricultural sector. We look at certain herbicides. And in other countries, they use robots now to be able to pull the invasive flora and work in the agricultural sector even me as Minister of Environment in my million tree planting drive would love to be able to access the usage of this technology instead of us having to use these harmful chemicals that can have a greenhouse gas effect. And I look forward to the day where robotics become an integral part of the new realities going forward, as well as having the ability. We just had a period of COVID where they had shut down for a period of time. And if we had drone technology and robotics being used, I think that this is the way we could have eased the pain associated with those shutdowns and to be able to access food and what's not for persons. I think it's a very, very good way to be going in terms of how we should be exploring all the full potentials of technology. And I look forward to the day when Barbadians can have this knowledge and this expertise and this technical assistance so we can enter these new dimensions. Thank you, Minister.
Chair, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mark Hill, the CEO of Bidc, also wanted to weigh in on the second part of Minister Ford's statement. So just if you can give him 2 minutes, we would appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Minister. Yeah, so in light of the Barbados becoming that hub for science, is a very key strategy in our repositioning our exports, particularly our scientific exports, how we boost that. So what we do have coming online as we seek to build out the business of science is that we have a study coming up, a comprehensive diversification study coming up that allows us to have a comprehensive analysis of how many scientists we have on the island, what is the scientific capacity that we need in order to get to our numbers, what is the build out, the rollout, and what is the economic roadmap from that scientific point of view. So that life science study is soon going to be launched, and it's going to cover a number of areas, medical technologies, pharmaceuticals market. The clinical trials is also going to explore marine biotechnology. Also in terms of industrial robotics, because as we speak about robotics, we're primarily talking about it from an educational, social point of view, but robotics is a very central part of the manufacturing process today. So we're looking at how do we integrate and make sure that we're producing our products to the necessary standards as far as our pharmaceuticals is concerned, using robotics to help us to produce necessary drugs and products that we want to use. So to answer the question in terms of a science council, absolutely, because one of the key parts of our strategy for growing our life science market is that we must put in place a global life science council. And this is at least having some of the leading life scientists on this council, along with some of our Barbadian counterparts, so that the standards is at a global level, and also that the recommendations that are coming through as far as policy is concerned is on par as what's happening in the international community. So, Minister, we really want to underscore that what you articulated, we're on track to execute in the short term. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to congratulate the Minister on his appointment. You have an exciting ministry with an exciting program, which we need to see come to reality, because I believe it's a major part of transforming Barbados. I too am excited because I've been given an assignment as Minister of State in the Ministry of Energy and Business Development, and so there's a lot of synergy between the two ministries. One of the things that's key for me is that there is a need in Barbados to create a more inclusive business environment where we're able to bring more people into the ring of business. We've certainly had an explosion of small business development, but many of them sit on the periphery and feel themselves not necessarily included in the opportunities, etc. And so we've not been having the greatest level of freshness in terms of bringing in new persons into the fold to help build out Barbados. I noticed that in your program, subheading 462, you have assigned to you 11.2 million to look at the development of manufacturing and services, as well as promoting export and fostering entrepreneurial activity. If you could share with us, what are the plans you have in the ministry for broadening participation among a wider group of persons and ensuring that they get access to the opportunities that will assist them to be able to build stronger businesses that can take Barbados forward and help us to meet our target of being able to increase the economy and the gross domestic product of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. You are hitting the nail on the head relative to the plans, and the CEO of BIDC would have alluded to some of those initiatives that we're going to roll out, so I'm going to go back to him shortly. But just to say that we have something coming on board, which is an innovation challenge, and you would have seen the BIDC even before this innovation challenge would have rolled out different innovation challenges relative to even how do we deal with the sargassum seaweed. We plan in that regard to democratize innovation. When I use that term, what I mean is that we're trying to make innovation as broadly accepted as we possibly can, including all of our citizens. You know, when you use big words like innovation, people think that you have to be sitting down in a lab, you know, concocting something and putting things together and coming up with this boom of an explosion of an idea. But in many times, innovation is very incremental in nature and is just based on current needs and finding a solution to a problem, and you just piece by piece make something better and improve it, and improve a process, or improve a product. So we are going to continue to do exactly what we've been doing thus far, which is to include as many of our citizens into the innovation process so that we can inculcate an environment, an attitude, and atmosphere, an ethos towards innovation and finding solutions to problems. And that's simply what innovation is. So the BIDC is already leading the way in this regard, and there are many programs that are on board to help us in that regard. And I think that even as some of these various school-based initiatives that we have talked about in the science realm, we will be able to see more persons being a participant in the innovation process and in the business process going forward. Because once you innovate, it gives the opportunity for commercial endeavor to manifest. I will say to you as a last point before handing over to CEO, is that the BIDC has a team of business development officers. And those business development officers go to work every single day to work with the average Barbadian, the small business person, the small entrepreneur, the micro enterprise, and to help them to find a way to get their business to the next level. If it is that a person out there has a small shop and maybe just a small product, not even a shop, but they have one individual product, we would say in the retail world, a SKU, stock keeping unit. If they have one unit, one item that they think is a winner, and they wanted to come to the business development officers at the BIDC and have a conversation with them, that person is there to help them to invest in their business, not only from the point of view of funding, which can be obtained through the BIDC, through the Special Technical Assistance Fund, but also through technical expertise and advice, counsel that can help them to shape their business and to form it and to structure it so that it goes from just being an idea and a nice product to being an actual commercial enterprise that can then be built out and go even further than what that person may have first imagined. So you're right on. We want to play our part in business development and to ensure that every person here has the opportunity, every one of our citizens has the opportunity, even from a fledgling idea, to be able to take that, bring it to us and see how we can help them to shape it out and build it out so it can be an opportunity for wealth creation for themselves and the generations to come. I will hand over now to the CEO of BIDC, and he could speak more so to your question.
Thank you, Minister. Yeah, one of the things I want to underscore is that export business, export entrepreneur is a strong business and a strong entrepreneur. Barbados is within the context of a market that is only 300,000 persons maximum. And COVID has shown us that our base load capacity within that market space is about $4 billion US. And if we're going to grow our economy, our entrepreneurs, our enterprises must have an export-oriented mindset. It's critical.
Absolutely.
So as long as we keep focusing inward, what we're doing, we're committing ourselves to build weaker organizations. Now let me explain what I mean. We can either try to produce what I call triathlons, so people who can run, ride, and swim, which is very, very expensive to do in terms of the investment in producing that type of entrepreneur, or we can focus on producing good riders, which are local entrepreneurs who can get around the island and generate as much revenue as they can within the 300,000 market, or we can produce swimmers that can go beyond the shores of Barbados and reach into the region, reach into the globe, explore the 52 bilateral agreements that this country has with all the other nations around the world, so that we now have access to a $28 trillion market, right? Our 52 bilateral agreements give us access to over $500 billion in market. So we want to really orient our entrepreneurs that there's more opportunity beyond the shores of Barbados. So to that extent, we have a tier system in place. And at the bottom of that tier system, which we currently have 111 persons that are registered in that particular space, we call the Export Academy. So there's a massive ecosystem in Barbados as far as small business support is concerned. So we have the trust loan, we have also youth entrepreneurship scheme, we have also enterprise growth fund, we have a massive ecosystem of almost 30 agencies out there. Export BIDC, Export Barbados BIDC, so that we are not a mile wide and an inch deep, and the only agency that's responsible for exports really need to focus on producing those swimmers that can get out into the globe and generate not just strong businesses, but also the foreign exchange that we so desperately need. So, but the thing is that in producing strong entrepreneurs that are exporting, it has that ripple effect on your local economy as well. So it is not a matter of giving up a focus on local small entrepreneurs. Like for example, as I said, the berry fruit. We have a gentleman who's exporting berry fruits at a very small scale, but he's focusing on exports. Now, in Barbados, a berry fruit sells in supermarket for $3.50. That same berry fruit is selling in Canada for 20 US dollars. For 20 Canadian dollars, sorry. It's selling in Britain for 15 pounds. So the reality is that there's more opportunity. There's more opportunity in that export space, and we therefore want to cultivate a culture of export, foster a mindset of exports among our entrepreneurs and our enterprises. Now, lastly, Minister, our private sector has a habit of focusing only on imports. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, much of that discussion is about cultivating importers. All right? Yeah. And cultivating importers. And those importers tap our reserves and something consume $3 billion last year, 2021, in imports. But only 300,000 went out. 300 million went out. So less than 10% of what we're spending on importing is being spent on generating the type of businesses that export. And therefore we have that trade imbalance, as you would perfectly know, that we need to narrow that gap, and to narrow that gap, we have to really encourage every entrepreneur, regardless of the size of their business, that they can be exporters, and that's what we need to be committed to, and really getting them export ready through the Export Academy, through our export program, and then they move up the line till they become a tier 1 exporter earning over $10 million US. And that's our goal, to grow them into those $10 million US companies as a matter of urgency. So thank you very much.
Music to my ears, and thank you so much for that response. I just will close by saying that one of the things I'm hoping that will be a part of your program is that we will cast the net wide so that you find the gems coming out that would be ready and have the capacity to do the swimming, so that we're not just fishing in a narrow pool, but in a very wide pool to find the gems that have to be trained specially for the swimming. Because I think that this is something that we need to do, broaden that access, that the best can come through and make the best use of the limited resources we have, that we can convert it into growth. And I thank you very much. Looking forward to working with you and your team, Minister, on these matters.
Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that you do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Member for St. Michael's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until Wednesday, the 2nd of March at 10 a.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until Wednesday, the 2nd day of March at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until Wednesday, the 2nd day of March at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.